just want to thank everybody for joining us again. It has been a while, and it's nice to see all of your faces. I want to introduce Kim Witczak. She's a nationally organized drug and safety advocate and speaker. After losing her husband to undisclosed side effects of an antidepressant, she founded Woody Matters to promote pharmaceutical accountability. She now serves as a consumer representative on the FDA's Psychopharmacologic Drug Advisory Committee and is widely recognized for her work on patient safety and healthcare transparency. Welcome, Kim.
An
Hi.
interesting, an interesting fact is that 128,000 people, Americans, die each year from taking medications that were prescribed to them because it wasn't a good mix for them and it did harm to them. And so go ahead, Kim. I just wanted to throw that fact in there.
Can
Oh,
you
well,
share, a little bit about yourself and Woody and what led you to start Woody Matters after his passing?
sure. Well, first of all, thank you. And I know some of you guys are up really, really early. I've already worked out. It's 8 o'clock here in Minneapolis. So I'm based in Minneapolis. And as Tanya and John said, I like to call myself an accidental advocate. And I say that because I do something today that I never in a million years would have chose to do, but sometimes our greatest purposes choose us. And so, 22 years ago, in August 6th, 2003, I got a call that literally changed my entire trajectory of my life. I was happily married for 10 years. Both my husband and I had successful careers. I'm still in advertising and marketing. And I got a call from my dad that literally rocked my world. I was out of town, and my dad called to tell me that my husband was found dead, hanging. And I was like, what? And like literally in one phone call, my entire life, because Woody had no history of depression, he had no history of mental health issues. 5 weeks earlier, he had started his dream job with a startup company earlier in the year, but he was having trouble sleeping, which, I know many of you, you have got your own, you guys are entrepreneurs. And I always call it like the 3 a.m. wake up call. So Wood was waking up at 3 in the morning, and it was something that was new for him. And he was a guy that I called Humpty Dumpty. He always went to the doctor. Like he was a big athlete, so they fixed him. He had a broken arm. They put a cast on it. He had stitches. And so he went to his doctor, and the doctor told him he was having trouble sleeping. And the doctor put him on and gave him a 3-week sample pack of an antidepressant, Zoloft, and said it would take the edge off and help him sleep. And I happened to be out of the country. It was my busy. I was a producer working on BMW, and I was down in New Zealand. So I wasn't even there when he first got put on the drug that automatically doubled the dose. And I come back 3 weeks later, and, I just had the time of my life. I had no idea what was going on back in Minneapolis. I come home, and I'll never forget Wood came walking. I was excited to see him, drops his bag at the back door, and he is like on the floor. And he's like, Kim, you got to help me. I don't know what's happening to me. My head's outside my body. And he's like this. And I'm like, and I've never seen that. And I remember like we calmed him down, called the doctor. The doctor said, you got to give the drug 4 to 6 weeks to kick in. And so every night the next week, Wood came home and he'd be like, what do you think about acupuncture? I'm going to beat this feeling. And then, so when I left out of town, like there was nothing in my mind that was like, this was going to be the end of it. And so when I had not heard from my dad, I'm like, hey, do me a favor, go check on him. He's been having trouble sleeping. So that in that 1 second, my entire life fell apart, and I literally didn't know that I would ever even be standing in here now. 22 years later, I'm here and doing the work that I do. But that night that Woody died, the coroner asked me a simple question: was Woody taking any medication? And the only medication he was on was Zoloft. And she said, we're going to take it with us. It might have something to do with his death. That was number one. Number two, the exact same night that he was found, the front page of our Minneapolis Star Tribune had an article that said the UK finds link between antidepressants and suicide with teens. So Wood left no note. We both left notes all the time. I always called it the honey-do list because it was usually what it was. Um, and so there was no note, but that literally that night, as my life fell apart, my brother-in-law, who's married to my sister, Googled Zoloft and suicide and found out the FDA had hearings in 1991 on the emergence of violence and suicide with Prozac. And at that time, every one of the members on the committee, the advisory committee that I now have served 9 years on as the consumer rep, took money from pharmaceutical companies making antidepressants. So they all went, nope, we don't see anything. And meanwhile, the FDA is like, oh, Eli Lilly studies suicidality. They never did. And now it's 2003, 11, 12 years after they first had the hearing. And now we have antidepressants, so Zoloft, Paxil, approved for kids. And I'm like, there's no warning. And so that really became our mission is to go out and get black box warnings because I mean, Woody always said, Kim, I'll never judge my life based on how much money I make, my career, it'll be based on my family, my friends, and leaving the world a better place. And I was like, so that really became kind of our driving is that we took to make sure what happened to him didn't happen to other families, that at least when they called their doctor, the doctor didn't say, give it 4 to 6 weeks to kick in. And so during this phase, I also had a big lawsuit against Pfizer and a wrongful death failure to warn. That's a whole different story. But and got documents out that showed in black and white what they knew and like people like us and I met families after families after families. And by no means when I say all this, I'm not anti drug, I'm not anti all that. I'm just pro information. And I think it's really about being informed and also like as somebody that has spent and I think it's a really unique perspective sitting on the FDA and like understanding how drugs come to market and like and that whole system is that I've spent my entire career in marketing and advertising. And so I kind of understand the game of it, but I've always thought like, why wouldn't you do the hard right, not the easy wrong? And like and selling and like it's I just always thought that I've never worked on pharma ads, but I would have thought like you would be at a higher standard. Like, it doesn't matter if you want to buy a BMW versus Mercedes or Coke versus Pepsi. Like, that's very different to me than when you're putting something in your bodies and then realizing through the lawsuit that one of the first places that lawyers go is the marketing department. And then I was like, whoa, like my whole world kind of is like intertwined. And so that's the backstory of why I call my accidental advocate. I never chose to do this work, but I feel like, and I didn't ever think literally I would ever laugh again, love life again. And through that, and I get like emotional, but through probably one of the most painful experiences in my life, I can now say that, wow, like I found my life and found purpose and to make sure that, that other people, and then also that I want to be inspiring. I never thought my voice mattered. As an individual, I thought, well, what can I do as an individual? But I realized, whoa, the power of our voices as individuals and I love butterflies because I think it's the butterfly effect when we come together and it inspires one. And this is what we can do as individuals in whatever part of our life. So, anyways, that's a little bit about me, and I still do this work today, and I still work in advertising, and I still go out and speak to groups because I think it's important to be informed.
That's a
Thank you.
lot.
I mean, medication has helped so many people and in their health and the advances in that. What advice do you give for people that are concerned about some of the side effects of things and not all the full disclosure to help us when it's that time that you need it, something to help you?
Yeah, that's a good question. One thing that I've learned through sitting on the advisory committee is literally it's the FDA has become kind of like the it's the hurdle you have to go through to get your product on the market, right? And so safety is always, and I've seen it on my committee. You know, they assume safety will be caught down the road. And so it's really about promoting, and it's like it's not level set. And so my question or my thing for everybody is uh, really informed consent is super important. What are the side effects? And if you don't know the side effects, I think it's really important. You know, I learned things like how the system has gamed keeping information from us. And also, one product is not safe and effective for everyone. Like that idea of safe and effective, I've come to think of it as a marketing. It's just kind of like everything is just like safe and effective, everything's safe and effective. But you know, your body's different than my body, and I think it's really important that this one size fits all, or just assume like, you know, maybe this drug works for you. And I know that there's like testing that they can do now to see like if your body can handle one kind of drug and versus another. And, you know, I also go back to when I think about when Woody got put on that med, and I wish I knew about, like, honestly, because we didn't have kids. So I didn't, you know, he's an adult, I'm an adult. I never really paid attention to your spouse or your partner's medicines. And now I realize, whoa, you better, because I would have asked a very different question, like, I mean, I never even like knew what Zoloft was, you know, and so I wish I would have known to say, why are they giving you an antidepressant for insomnia? You know, and so there would have been just some questions that I think we should always ask, even if no one's going to care more about you or your family's health than you. And so, and not to give our power away. And I think even when I think about Woody, were there other things, and I think this is a good question, are there other things that I could try first? And that's just a question. Questions doesn't mean that you're saying no. I think it's just being informed, because at the end of the day, this is what we've got is our body and our health. And I feel like um, it's one of the greatest wealths. You know, you can't really sometimes buy good health. And so I think, you know, really keeping that, again, all the things I've learned the hard way, that I think about it very different today.
I was going to ask you what steps people could take to protect themselves or to give themselves just a little bit more, I don't know, I guess of a cushion. Have you, besides, you know, asking that one question, like, is there anything else? Because most people don't know, you know, in layman's terms, what medication, you know, we go to the doctors to seek help. Um, is there a way that what would be the good questions for us to ask those doctors? Besides, is there anything else? Because I feel like that kind of leads you down the same trail than when they first prescribe something.
Yeah, you know, well, first of all, I always say, which I can't believe I'm gonna like, I would never have thought this because before, like, go see if there's any litigation, the lawsuits against the drug that they're putting you on, because lawsuits don't just come out of nowhere. So I always tell people, just go see if there's been any lawsuits about that drug, because sometimes our doctors they don't even know, you know, with a lot of the antidepressants, I learned about ghostwriting. I didn't realize that pharmaceutical companies write the studies, but then it was through litigation, through documents where it said they already knew when the article was going to run. So these are journal articles that our doctors are going to read. And it said Dr. TBD. So they already knew when it was running, what it was like about, but they had to go find a doctor. And I was like, wait a minute, I never knew about that practice. And I think when you have few, um, and I've also educated my doctor on it. And so I think it is seeking out, I mean, there are resources that like are not the traditional, like that are pharma funded. I mean, that's the problem when so much of our, you know, information is funded by the companies. then you have to like go dig deeper. But I always say, like, in the case of antidepressants, I always tell people if that's ultimately where you're going to go and you make that decision, it's your decision, you've been fully informed. Also ask, like, what's the exit strategy? Like, how long should I be on it? Like, just so that it's not like supposed to be something you can be on for the rest of your life. And some people can't get off of it. And that's a huge problem we're seeing now with antidepressants is people's bodies can't get off of it. And so I think it's just about, asking questions and also intuitively, if something doesn't feel right in your body or you're seeing something, like listen to that, because I think we have been given a compass, an internal compass that actually we need to be better at listening to our bodies that are trying to tell us something.
Thank you so much, Kim. I know I'm seeing so much in the chat of people been through similar things. I know when my wife went through two things of cancer, you are so at the mercy and you're at the lowest point in your life and you just want answers and you you listen because you're desperate and you're like and there so many times you're feeling like you've got to make this decision right now. I know a lot of us feel like like the market when you have a buyer and you've got multiple offers, like you got to make a decision right now and write this offer or you're going to lose out. So many times in health you feel so desperate and you need to do it and so you do it, but you haven't asked all the right questions. But having a third party or a spouse or someone who can think more clearly
Yeah,
is important. But
absolutely. I was going to say, I think that's the thing, that we also have to remember is when you go to the doctor, you usually, I mean, you're at the lowest, like you just want help, right? And I've realized that this idea of giving our power away blindly without, even asking questions, like, I think about you guys, a lot of you are like real estate. In the process, I'm the executor of my in-laws estate, and we're just getting ready to sell. And I'm like I have to have experts because I'm not an expert, right? Like, and so but I also have to, like, I want to have somebody else that I'm bouncing things off of. And I think it's really important when it comes to your health. Like, I always say, bring somebody with you. I've learned so many things from people who have been in the system, and then they find out that they're like in that place of desperation, but then they don't always hear everything, right? So if you bring somebody else in, and I know like my parents, my mom always goes with my dad, so she can be an extra ear. And I think that's really important because, I think doctors in want to do the right thing, right? They want to do the right thing. I think that's why they go into medicine. But again, at the end of the day, it's you that if something happens to, or if something happens to your loved one, you're the one that lives with the impact. The doctor doesn't, the companies don't, like all you're the one that lives with it or your family. So you really do need to be your own advocate. And that's the one thing that, again, I learned the hard way because we gave our power away. And I think what he did too, he always thought that doctors, because they fixed him. Like when he was an athlete, they fixed him. So he's like, yeah. And he was a good military kid. And so he just believed. And that's the thing that I've definitely have learned.
Well, thank you for sharing because as you share, it's making all of us, think, hey, we need to be an advocate, whether it's for ourselves or for a loved one. And, personally, I have felt that when you are in the doctor's office and they list anything that's wrong or you stop listening, your mind goes to whatever they said, and then it goes down the road of all of your preconceptions of whatever that illness may have been. So I agree that it is great to have somebody with you. You can't always expect that if you're going in for a regular appointment, but
Yeah.
usually you don't get that type of news on just a regular appointment. But when
Or
you
you
are
know what?
going,
You have your phone. Like I think as
good
consumers,
idea.
consumers, you can ask, hey, I'm going to, because I actually call us consumers, and my patient safety people do not like when I say it, but I'm like, you guys, we're customers. We have to remember we're
It is a
customers.
business.
It's
Yes.
business, and healthcare is a business. They need patients to go to business. That's how they make. So I'm like, you're the consumer, so why can't you? It's your body. There's no reason why you can't have your phone and go, is it all right if I record this conversation? Or there's things that I've learned that because of my marketing background, when I don't know where it is in your parts of the country, but in Minnesota, at every, like when you check in at the insurance, it's all your insurance paperwork and all that. They give you a mental health screening form. And it's called the PHQ-9, at least, in our big health system. And nobody realizes, I mean, it's like in the last 2 weeks, have you felt sad? Have you felt unworthy? Like all of that. But at the very bottom, it says a generous donation by Pfizer Inc. and 3 key opinion leaders. And so when I brought that up to my doctor, I'm like, wait, this is like a screening tool. And so my brain is like, so what do you do with this if I give it to you in good intention? It's the right thing, right? It feels like, oh, we're going to have this conversation. But most of us, when we're at our doctor, we get 5 minutes and no one asks, like, how do you have enough time? Like, no one's really going into like, oh, your dog died. Oh, wait, your kid just like so you don't have any context. And so the doctors, when I asked, what do you do with it? She heard herself say, I give us like she saw herself go, I give them, and I go, exactly. And you're doing the marketing. This is all marketing, bringing them into the funnel. And she was like, whoa. And so I loved that I had this conversation. I've had really good, and I am not afraid to challenge my doctors. And I think all of us, because you know what, I'm sure your customers, they all challenge you all the time, right? That I think
No,
about
never. Nobody ever challenges
they're
us
like,
in
all
real
right, you just
estate.
tell us what to do. Well, I know that's what I'm saying. Like that's how we have to, but we haven't thought that. And I remember I was getting ready. I had some crazy thing that happened during 2020, and I had to go and have an endoscope. And I had never had an endoscope, right? Where they're putting something down my body. So I kept asking the doctor a million questions. And he looked at me and he goes, do you know how, and he got really annoyed at me. And he goes, do you know how many of these I do every single week? And I looked at him and I go, I'm not questioning you. I've never had anything like this done to me. And I'm afraid. And so like, this isn't about you. And so anyways, I think that is there's nothing wrong with asking questions if it doesn't feel right to you, because it is you and your family's health after all.
Exactly. I am. The chat's blowing up. I'm so glad we've got you on this today because it health affects everyone, and
Yeah.
we go so often just believe because you want, like, isn't the first thing the doctor says to do no harm? Isn't that first thing they say, like in the what's that called, the Hippocratic Oath or something like that, to do no harm, and you're at their mercy. What do you see on the progress on with your involvement with the FDA? You've spoken in front of Congress, and you're so involved nationally. Do you see change happening in the right form in moving forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, I'm going to say this. When I started back in going out to DC, I never liked DC. I never liked politics. Woody always loved politics. I hated politics. I went out there and I was like, it was the first time I was like, wait, health is about politics. And I remember saying to them, this is not a red or blue issue. This is purple for people. And I kept saying that over and over. And I thought, but I quickly realized health out in DC is so political. So with saying that, I have to say the same thing now, because I'm like, wait a minute, like, why is transparency and asking questions and account like I have always said transparency, shouldn't be something that has become political. And, if something like just some of the things, so I feel like there are changes that are happening that I think are actually good, but then the media, and then when you look at the power of the media and the mainstream media where people get their news, you got to start digging deeper because you realize, wait, the number one category of advertising on the mainstream media is the pharmaceutical companies, and they have plants in there. And so then you're like, wait, why is everybody speaking off the same song sheet? And so anyways, you start looking at this, you're like, well, maybe it's because we are actually now playing with somebody's business. And so that's what I'm like, I always say, wonder when they're speaking, anybody's speaking, where are they coming from? Like, what are their, like I once got kicked off of one of my FDA advisory committees days before on Chantix, and it was Pfizer, and they were going to take down the black box warning, which is the most serious of warnings, and they had big lawsuits. And it was the first time I ever heard this, which is they were like, it came to our attention that you have an intellectual bias. And I'm like, what is it? I didn't even know what it meant, an intellectual bias, when I got kicked off the FDA. And it's because I go, oh, you mean like an intellect, like the place where I come from is safety first? Like that is
Because
my,
you ask questions.
yeah. And I got literally kicked off because I knew too much about Pfizer and the lawsuits. And I was like, an intellectual bias. And so then I say, okay, if I have one, then we all kind of do, right? So it's just like, okay, if somebody's there, like I'm going to always come safety first, and that will be that is where I come from. But now when somebody else is saying something, you're like, huh, well, could there be something more? And it's like being willing to be uncomfortable and challenge what you think or thought you believed. And then you go, where is that perspective coming from? And when I had to do that. And I think that's one of the gifts that came out of after Woody died is that everything blew up. So I had to sit and be uncomfortable with everything like, well, what if that isn't true? What if? And so that's what I say about stuff that I see out now in DC, like the media, they're all saying the exact same thing. It's destroying health, but is it, or is it not, like, again, not saying politics at the end of the day, purple for people. And so, because drugs don't know that somebody's a red or blue, it doesn't matter. It's like a person. And so that is, I am worried, but I'm also hopeful because we're asking questions. And I think what I've seen is I've been on the inside of the system. And, being in Congress at the, Capitol, I've done Senate hearings at the FDA, and I'm in the system. But where I think the real power lies is you and I asking questions, which is they don't really necessarily want us asking questions. I think it comes from bottom up. And really that's where I think the power is. And that's where I think I'm personally hopeful. But there are things I just saw, and I'm not really following the chat, and I can't wait to like dig into the chat. But I saw something that just popped up, Ozempic. And I remember I always say healthcare is a business, and I love personally to follow what Wall Street has to say. And every January in San Francisco is the healthcare conference that's put on by JP Morgan. And it's for all the healthcare companies and the investors and Wall Street. And I always go and see what they say are the biggest opportunities for business. And the last couple of years, the two biggest opportunities that they say are off the charts, off business opportunities, not necessarily health, um, is obesity and Alzheimer's. And if you look at where all the monies are being put in, I know people who are working for the reinsurance companies, which basically are the companies uh, that insure, like the drug companies, the doctors, et cetera. And they're telling the companies to be putting monies aside of their profits because they know big lawsuits are coming on the Ozempics and all the GLP-1s. Again, I say that should not be a cost of doing business, but I've noticed that, after same with antidepressants, all this stuff, like litigation is just kind of built into the business plan, and people like Woody and all the people who have been harmed are just acceptable collateral damage. And I think that's where it's just we have to be like, and yet we're humans. And so we're like, I want the quick fix. I want the quick fix. I don't want to it is easier to do a lot of quick fixes, but just knowing that it's also a business and there's harms and it's a balance.
People are just hoping that they're not
Yeah.
exemption, right?
Yeah. You never
I-
think you are.
Yeah. I do love the purple for people. That's so great. And as you bring it up, you're right. There's so many pharmaceuticals that are, I don't know that you can watch a TV show without seeing an ad for a pharmaceutical.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
got them off.
Of
They
some
took them out of
sort.
the magazines. They need to take them off the TV now. They need to do that. Marco,
Are they out of magazines?
Well, we're only one of two. Well, I don't think the reason they're out of magazines is not because it's because people aren't really reading
Because
them.
people don't buy magazines anymore, right? We get all
That's
of our
why they're
information
out.
online.
Well, and like influencers, the thing is right now, these companies, and this is where they're trying to look into it, like Instagram and all those, they have the nano influencers, the micro influencers that um, they have no structure around. So it's kind of a wild west out there. And so you think they're like, promoting something, you're like, but are they actually getting paid by the company? And so that's what they're talking about but we're one of only two countries in the world that allow drug ads, period.
I've heard that before, which is a little crazy to me. It does show you, it is kind of like that's where the money is. They don't make hospitals to have empty beds, right? So it's definitely a business, and it's just something to keep in mind. Have you seen any changes? Like, has there been any positivity that's come out of you being on these boards? What have you seen that you can share that has, kind of improved for the better?
Yeah, well, I think, well, first of all, the fact that I think there's this idea of transparency and questioning. I think that has been one of the good things that has come out of even COVID, is that people are just questioning things. And so I think there's been more awareness and more everyday people like us that are being more aware of the issues. So I think that's been a really good thing. I think there's been now personally, I've worked with our new FDA commissioner. I've worked with him years before. I think he's really good. There's things that I don't necessarily agree, but that's okay, on things. But I think there's an effort of transparency, and we should have information. Like, I look back at, again, I don't have kids, so I never really paid attention to any of the vaccines. But why is it that in 1986 they gave them complete legal immunity, right? And I was like, the companies, and that's when the number skyrocketed and are they, so I think questions doesn't necessarily mean bad. And I think that is what we have to remember. Even though the media might be painting it out to be a certain way, I think asking questions, for me, I remember like during COVID when I heard like Pfizer was giving complete legal immunity for their COVID vaccine, and I was like, wait, you mean
Can you explain what that means? I'm sorry to interrupt, but what's COVID?
Sure.
What's legal immunity?
So basically they can't be sued for harms. So if somebody got hurt. And so
Wait. The reason that happened was they were trying to rush the drug
yeah,
without being able to go through all the usual safety checks.
yeah.
And the government and people wanted the drug. If they had to go through all the safety checks, it would have taken a lot longer to
Oh,
ever make it to the market.
yeah, that's
So,
true.
so that's why that happened. It wasn't that, oh, here's a deal. Let's just give it to you. That had to be worked out. I just like,
Yeah, that is true.
please present this with
Okay.
clear facts, okay? You just made it sound like, oh, they gave them legal immunity and we don't know what happened. They were not going to bring it to the market unless they had that. And the
Yeah,
government was
that is
pushing
a
it
business.
because
That
people
is
were
true.
freaking dying.
Yeah, so that is true. But I'm also going to say that it is one of those things that I have learned in my drug safety work. And you're right, we needed fast tracking. We're hearing, I mean, that's what they did, right? Is we needed something on the market fast. And as a company, why are you going to do it? But I also feel like there are a lot of people who have been harmed that I have worked with that now have no recourse. And I think that is part of the problem that we should have had a system that that actually could, again, for most people, it's not an issue. But if you're one of those people that it does become an issue, and it's one of the things that I have learned about um, with drugs, and it's what we say all the time, like most side effects, if there's going to be side effects, you might not know until years after, right? That it comes on the market and you may not like, it may not be seen in the clinical trials. And I've seen it with example for Nuplazid, which was a Parkinson's psychosis drug, and they had tried to get it approved before, and they didn't get it approved under the initial two double, the traditional way of getting it approved, that they were able to use something called fast tracking, which is a new kind of way of getting drugs on the market. And it was less clinical trials. And I remember saying, because there was only 180 some people in that clinical trial, that there's no way that you're going to know what the full benefit or potential harms could be until later. And I said, I have a feeling, and the two people that voted no were myself and the person with Parkinson's. And literally 2 years later, when all the side effects and there were deaths associated with this drug, CNN called me and said, we want to know why you voted no. And I said, because we don't know. That's the part of the problem with new drugs that come on the market, is that we don't, even if it's all done, and I'm not saying, to your point, like I'm not saying it's a bad, but we just need to know that that is the risk benefit that we do take, that we may not know the true harms that potentially can happen until it's on the market. And so, but yes, from a business standpoint, sure. But I also feel like that was when I look at the not being able to take, the given immunity, then we should have had something in place for the people who would be harmed or would potentially, like what recourse did they have? They didn't really have, and there's still, if you really look at it, they still don't have a whole lot of recourse right now to even get help. So,
Th-
but thank you for that.
yeah, very much. This work that you are doing, and obviously this is, out of your free time because you have a full-time career. It's got to be incredibly emotional at times. What do you do to keep you grounded and motivated to keep pushing forward?
Yeah. Well, one thing is I have to, my physical, mental, and my spiritual practice. I'm a person of faith. I have to be, because this work is really hard. It's emotional. Even just the conversation, like I get this all the time in this work, even for people with that have been helped. I'm like, I'm not about either or, it's both and. And so I have to always remember that keeping my faith is super important. My own personal like workout and like moving my body and yoga and all of that's pretty important to me.
Yeah, that's you have to take care of yourself first. We call that healthy selfish in
Yeah.
this group.
I know,
Exactly.
Marco, why don't you unmute? You had your hand up for a while. You had a question. I know you had your wife before she passed. You were right by your side with cancer. What's your question?
Thanks, John. And John and Tanya, thanks for putting this on today and bringing Kim on board, because I think we all need to be much more aware of the pharmaceutical industry out there. I mean, you think tobacco and liquor are bad. This is a real shit show going on out there. I work with a young man who is a fentanyl addict, and I've been in the recovery world for 34 years, so I know a lot about what's going on. And he was put on Suboxone for almost 2 years, and he tried to kill himself 6 different times. And he finally, over the last 2.5 months, weaned himself fully off Suboxone, and he's clean and sober today. But he would call me at 3 and 4 in the morning every night, just screaming out of his mind. He could, I mean, like his skin was crawling. Like some of these drugs, I mean, you thought methadone was bad coming off of heroin. And yeah, Zoloft is bad. There's a lot of them that are bad, but Suboxone is like the new bad guy on the market. And I work with a lot of rehabs around the country too, and the rate of sobriety is so low because they over medicate in these rehabs and they overprescribe drugs. And I know a ton of people that ran rehabs that just walked away from that business, and there's a lot of money in it, but they just couldn't watch people dying. So, yeah, this is a really bad thing. So, Kim, thanks for bringing it to our attention. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and you brought up a good thing. I didn't realize that whole addiction, where a lot of times people are trying to get off, but they just replace it with another pharmaceutical. So that that's a whole nother thing that I'm not that, not involved, but I've heard exactly what you've said, Marco, many times from people who've actually work in the industry, but have gotten off the medications and are trying to do something totally different, like in the plant medicine world now. And so it's a whole, at the end of the day, there's so many things out there we just need to be aware of.
Hmm. Yeah.
Can I ask you, this is a little bit off the topic, but I think many of us, as it's become sadly more and more common, suicide in general, what would, I don't know really even how to phrase it. I'm asking, what can other people do who have not been directly affected? I have a friend who lost a son. I know many that have, lost friends, coworkers, family members. How can we help those people that are left behind, that are the ones handling everything after that person is gone? Do you have any advice, tips?
Yeah, really good question. Because I think it's a really hard conversation for a lot of people because it's like, but I'm going to say one thing that I learned by going to one of my suicide support groups, um, is a lot of people, and I have to like died by suicide versus committed suicide. I think it's a simple thing, but I think family members that have been through that, I mean, it's a trigger that, or even if it doesn't trigger them personally, it's something that they're super aware of. So just that simple died by, or is really, I think, or took their own life. I think it's just a different way because committed, there's just something that can be triggering for people. And I also think just, I remember it was something to do with all the veterans, and I had to moderate a panel of parents that just lost their kids. And I didn't want to talk. The first thing I asked them was, tell me about your kid. Like, tell me about their kid and not what happened. Like that, yeah, that you're gonna always, but like, who was your kid? Like, who was your loved one? Like, tell me about them because there was, even if there was like, the depression, or they just, they were people. And I think that's really like, tell me about them. And I think that actually makes you want to mention something about your loved one, like, oh yeah, I'll tell you about who this person is. And those families, like I saw their whole and there's like 5 different families. I saw their whole body language change with that simple question before we got into the ugly stuff. But they just want to talk, and that's who they want to remember. And so I think that's important. And I also feel like don't be afraid to ask about, or to say, how are you doing? Let them tell you that they don't want to talk about it. But I think we're so afraid of like the person who lost the person knows that they lost the person. So like that's always on their mind. But and I think we're always afraid like, "Oh, I don't want to like offend them or
I don't
whatever."
want to remind them.
Yeah, I don't want to remind them. But the thing is, like, yeah, they
They're
know,
very aware. Yes.
they're aware,
Yeah.
but they can tell you. And I think it's just, I had a lot of like my own family members. I had an aunt and uncle that the first year after Wood died, and Woody was such a huge personality. Like you knew he was gone. Nobody t said his name. Like and I was like, because they were afraid of like trigger. I'm like, so no one said anything. And I mean, maybe this is a Minnesota thing, that we, Scandinavian. But anyways, years later, my aunt came up to me. She goes, that has sat with us for years that we never said anything to you. And I go, yeah, funny. It sat with me too.
Yeah.
I mean, because I remember. And
Yeah.
so it's okay. And the reality is we're all going to have to face some kind of death and probably have of loved ones. And so I think it's just a conversation that we shouldn't also be afraid and you know, and I think with suicide, there's a whole other like guilt, like should have I wish I would have. That's another piece as a survivor that you're sitting there going, like, what could have I done? Like, but it had nothing to do, like, at the end of the day, it still had nothing, like, yeah, but not blaming myself, but you go through those emotions, like, could have I, would have I, like, so that is something that I think, just to remember that's there. But I think mostly just not being afraid to say anything. But for me, I am really aware of committing.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Thank you. That's a great died by suicide. That's helpful,
Mhm.
I'm sure,
Tanya,
for
thank you
many.
so much for asking that question. Seriously.
Yeah, it was a really good question.
Hey, Kim, um, what's the best advice you've ever been given by someone that you feel has helped you? And who was it? Who was it from? And what was the situation?
Oh, the best advice. Oh, I've got probably actually it was my friend, or he was a mentor, but it's not anything about this world, the advocacy, but he said, always always have friends older than you and younger than you. He goes, that is a world and that is a life well lived because we can learn so much from people above you that are older than you that have more experience and people who are younger and so I love that. It's one of my favorite things that I tell everybody. Always make sure that that you are around people who are both ages. So that was one thing. And then probably another was way back when uh, I remember asking a mentor or somebody I was trying to get into the business, and I said, how do I repay you? And he said, always be willing to give your time and pay it forward and have conversations and not always feel like, oh, I don't have time. But you never know who might be taking over, that you might be giving them something that will inspire and they go create something. So
That was beautiful. I love it. Is
yeah.
that why, Tanya, you hang out with me because I'm older than you?
That's exactly why. That's exactly why.
Oh my gosh, those are some of my favorite people. And I love my young people too that are, I'm like, ah. So,
Well, we so appreciate your time today. We like to kind of end every call with what we call six at six. And they're kind of rapid fire questions. They don't take a lot of thought, just a chance for us to get to know you a little bit on a lighter side. If you could go back in time or head somewhere in the future, where would you go and why?
ooh, if I'd go somewhere in the future, I think I want to go to space. I love stars. I love the sky. And even when I was a kid, I loved all of that. Like, I think I was a dreamer.
That's great. Any particular, well, I guess if you're going into space, you
I'm
could
just going to
have
the
gone.
stars. That's why I
Right.
love looking
Yeah.
at the sky, and I'm kind of a I still love doing that.
It's just a little travel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could have gone up with the Jeff Bezos girls the other month. Did they really go up? I don't know. So,
I don't know.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Nice. Is there a book or a movie that you tend to go to over and over again?
Oh, I would say the book I love The Power of Intention by Wayne Dyer.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Favorite ice cream?
I don't really like ice cream. I'm a chip, I'm a salt girl.
Oh, you're salty. All right. Favorite chip?
Oh, I just love chips. Chips and guac. It's like we were just talking about it at the gym. We're not supposed to have it. I'm like, I just always crave chips and guac.
I'm there with you. I'll take that any day. Beach house or mountain house?
Oh, beach.
Nice. When was the last time you were at the beach?
The last time I was at the beach was this summer. I was in dealing with Wood's parents' place outside of Jacksonville, Jacksonville Beach.
Hmm.
And it was just nice. I'd never been there. It was like the ocean just feels so good.
That's nice. I see a few ocean pictures here. Malene.
yeah, Malene.
Gotta love it.
Yeah.
And last question, what are you going to do right after this call?
What am I going to do right after this call? I'm going to go make more coffee, but then I actually have another.
Me too.
I was like, I have a mastermind group that I'm a part of that I have that call after this.
Great. Well, thank you again. We so appreciate you taking the time. Your conversation and education has been just amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks. Thanks everybody for listening and also I appreciate the conversation. I think it was Bob or something too. I appreciate that. It's a good reminder for me too, Bob.
No, thank you, Kim. Your time, your passion. I think of all the people that Tanya and I have interviewed, you're the most passionate. And I appreciate that. I love passionate people.